This is the brand new Google Pixel 9. I had some time hands on this phone, and although mid-range phones used to be boring,
the Google Pixel 9 here is probably the second controversial mid-range phone launching this year, and I actually have some thoughts on it. In fact, in a lot of ways this is really quite similar to the iPhone 6. So let's unpack this possibly controversial phone in a good, bad format. Talking about what I like and maybe what I'm a little bit concerned about with this phone. Starting off with the positives, the highlights are that this phone has the same chip as the flagship Pixel 9 Pro, the same dust and water resistance, it has wireless charging, has an aluminum frame, NFC, and essentially all the same features that we saw, software-wise, as this is the flagship Pixel 9 Pro. And in many ways it aims to offer a trimmed-down flagship Pixel experience for anybody not looking to spend $1,000 on a phone. Maybe you want to spend under $500 and still get a lot of those core software features. But the question becomes, what compromises were actually made? Well, the first downside is we've already seen when people saw the leaks. There was a lot of discussion about the design language on this phone being a little bit deviated from the classic Pixel camera borrowing, seeing since the Pixel 6, 7, 8, and 9. Really a nice looking camera bar in the back in my opinion. But getting rid of that on this makes it more of a plain boring design. Some people don't like that. You can leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the back of this camera. To me, it feels a lot more like the Pixel 4, a kind of in many ways. But I think there's a positive here. The silver lining is that there's almost no camera bump at all. I actually find it pretty refreshing to have a phone that doesn't have a very large protrusion on the back, and I think objectively, a thinner phone is going to be more pocketable and in many ways better, or has some advantage in that sense. This does come in 4 different colors. Peony, which is like pinkish one. We've got iris porcelain and obsidian. I think the colors look pretty nice. You could choose if you want more vibrant or more muted, but getting to a negative, this does have a plastic back. Some people prefer a plastic back for its durability. It's not going to crack on you like a glass back might, but for me personally, I am definitely one who prefers a glass back. The positive though, this phone is getting 7 years of updates. That's pretty big for a mid-range phone. And as I mentioned, this phone is $499. That's the same price as the Galaxy A56. And it's actually a lot more expensive than the Nothing 3.8 Pro. So I'm going to make a comparison between all 3 of those phones, and be sure to get subscribed if you haven't already and you want to see that comparison, as well as leave a comment and let me know what else I should compare this phone to. Getting back to a positive. Much like the iPhone 16e, this mid-range phone gets the same software features as the flagship series, as I mentioned before. So for example, that includes Google, VPN, no extra cost, Google Call Screening, Audio Magic, or Razer. Now playing hold for me the overall clean Android experience. The UI is going to be, very similar to what we saw on the Pixel 9 Pro series. And I think all of that is a huge positive considering you're spending significantly less than this flagship phones. But getting back to a negative, as you can see on the front, the bezels still looked a little bit chunky in my opinion, and I think they're improved, but they're still a little bit large around the edges. A positive. This does have QI wireless charging, has a 5100 mAh battery, which I would say is fairly large as fast charging, and the battery claims to last over 30, or Google claims the battery will last over 30 hours with normal use, which I think is really a huge win here. Another positive is that it does have car crash detection, crisis alerts, safety check, and they also said it has emergency SOS and theft protection. But a downside, and this is probably a big one, that once I get it in the studio and really test it a lot more, I will have a full camera analysis on this. But the downside is that there are only 2 lenses in the back. One of them is a 13 megapixel ultra-wide lens. Okay, fair enough. And the other one is a 48 megapixel wide-angle lens. Now that sounds like a fairly high megapixel count, but you could only zoom into 8x. Other phones around this price, like, the Nothing 3.8 Pro, like I said, have periscope lenses. I can zoom in significantly further than that with significantly better quality. Now Google is known to outperform with weaker hardware in the camera department. So once I have this in the studio, we'll see how this half-inch sensor performs, especially in low light. Considering the sensor, a half-inch sensor is smaller than the Pixel 8. A sensor, which I believe was 1/1.75 or 1.78 or something like that. Again, it was larger last year than it is this year, which might imply weaker, low-light performance, especially with video, which by the way, the video, although you can record in 4K 30 or 4K 60, you're only able to zoom in up to 5x. Now, I know zooming is not absolutely everything, but I'm picturing a lot of people you might be at, like your kid's soccer game. You want to zoom in. Going to a positive. Something that they did add this year is a macro focus mode for both photos and for videos. Additionally, we are still getting a lot of the Google software type things on the camera, including astrophotography night sight time-lapse.
This also has optical and electronic image stabilization.
They have Add Me on here, which is a great feature I've really enjoyed using, and a lot of the AI kind of camera features I'm really against.
But Adam is a pretty good one.
So for example, like at Thanksgiving, if I'm with my whole family, I can take a photo of everybody, then I can go sit down, somebody else can get up and take the photo.
It'll stitch them together and have one photo of everybody there. We also have cinematic pan and active video stabilization, things like that.
A positive with this phone, the 6.3-inch actual display at 20:9 aspect ratio, it's 1080 by 22 by 24 pixels, and it goes from 60 to 120 Hz. It has HDR support, so it doesn't go all the way down to 160.
Is the minimum here, and that should be fine?
You know, they already said 30-hour battery life.
I would like to see it go lower. Maybe can get a longer battery life out of this. But you know, even 60 to 120 pretty solid right there. But the downside is that it doesn't really get that bright.
Like if you're using it outside, as I was when I was filming this video, I found that sometimes it was a little difficult to see the display a positive. As I mentioned in the very beginning of this video, this has the same Tensor 4 chip as the Flagship Pixel 9 Pro and the Titan M2 security chip. The downside, there are some other kind of weird not up-to-date things on here, so it only has Bluetooth 5.3, which is fine for most stuff, but Bluetooth 5.4 has been out for 2 years already. It also has Wi-Fi 6E instead of Wi-Fi 7 and a few other specs that aren't really like top-of-the-line positive, though this does have face and fingerprint unlock.
The bad thing.
I believe the fingerprint unlock is ultrasonic, not a huge deal, but I would expect this to kind of take a little while to sign in with fingerprint. Again, we'll see this when we actually get this in the studio.
Positive durability is going to be good. Sure, aluminum can get dinged up on the outside.
The rails are made of aluminum, but you have IP68 dust and water resistance, which I think is pretty solid on a mid-range phone.
It also has NFC, so you can use it for payments and things like that. And aside from that, some other basic specs: 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage at that $499 price. It can go up to an extra $100 for 256 gigs of storage, and it does allow you to have 2 SIMs in here, one physical SIM and one eSIM, so you can leave your SIM in your primary SIM in the phone, and then when you're traveling get an eSIM through like the Arlo app or something like that. So that's a summary of the Pixel 9.
Once I actually get it in the studio, I'm excited to do some speed tests to see how similar the Tensor G4 chip is in that phone versus the Flagship, as well as of course the camera testing is going to be huge. But I think the Pixel A series really used to be the mid-range phones that cut as many costs as possible, but delivered the best cameras in class with a simple version of Android as well,
which is kind of nice for a lot of people. And we'll see how the photos look once we have this in the studio.
I'm confident the primary lens is probably still going to take some of the best shots of any mid-range phone with good color, good skin tones, probably a lot of contrast. But the downside is the primary sensor and the lack of a telephoto lens in 2025 are definitely big concerns of mine. I think we'll find out in that comparison how it actually performs. But other than that, let me know what you guys think about this phone, any questions you might have, and what else I should compare this to in that upcoming video.
Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.